animation, cartoons, children. In the beginning of time, in the wild developing west of the good old US of A, these three things were often associated with each other. The medium of drawing slapped together one after another to mimic movement, also known as animation, was the foundation for cartoons. And you see, well, cartoons are for children. As soon as you hit the ripe age of 13 and ascended from preteen to teen, you were no longer allowed to enjoy this baby beta male bullshit. It's out to the mines, boys, and for all you ladies, you can stay in the house actually. But there's no time for watching cartoons, girls. There are clothes that need to be ironed and human rights that need to be retracted from your being. Animation was for babies. And so as man evolved from Neanderthal to Homo sapien, it was instilled in any good American that if you were to be an adult, you would like real shows like Bonanza and I Love Lucy. Maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but beginning in the 1960s and 1970s, Saturday morning cartoons began airing across public stations, slowly building popularity as entertaining and sometimes educational programs for younger audiences. And for this reason, an association was built up between the medium of animation and perhaps the arguable immature nature of the medium. I mean, at this time in history, the Federal Communications Commission, also known as the FCC, had a firm grasp on the balls of media companies operating in America at the time. They regulated what was made, how it was made, and if they liked the fact that it was even made at all. And because of this, cartoons aimed at children had to make sure they were entirely for children. No adult themes here. There were, of course, exceptions to this rule. Take, for example, 1972's Fritz the Cat, which I will not show on screen. Just know that it existed and I will not elaborate further. But this movie, in many ways, was a catalyst of the furry movement, up there with the Founding Fathers, Sonic the Hedgehog, and 1941's The Wolfman. But in the 1980s, things would change. Hard. 1980, Ronald Reagan is elected President of the United States. Liberals be gone. Taxes be gone. And most importantly to the story, regulations be gone. Yeah, President Reagan was tired of being regulated. America was about freedom. And because of this, many of the overimposing restrictions and regulations put in place by organizations like the FCC flew out the window, which gave animation production companies a lot more leeway to do what they wanted, when they wanted, within reason, of course. He-Man, Transformers, G.I. Joe, cartoons now had accessibility to slightly mature themes, and eventually, this would result in shows like The Simpsons being made, a pillar of animation that would lay the groundwork for adult animated comedies as a genre. Another effect of Reagan's deregulation was the ability for media companies to own more stations, and because of this, in 1992, Turner Broadcasting Station would launch a TV channel dedicated to cartoons.
Cartoon Network, the best place for cartoons.
Now initially, Cartoon Network kinda just did reruns of old cartoons, stuff they had from Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera, and although this tradition would later carry on with one of the Cartoon Network's offshoots, Boomerang, it didn't take too long for them to start making their own programming. This all started with their first technical show, The Moxie Show. Now when I say technical show, it's because The Moxie Show wasn't really much of a show in the standard sense, but instead more of a short cartoon segment that played in between cartoons, and for this reason it's not super notable to be honest. But the next show, well, if you watch my channel, you might recognize this face. Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Space Ghost was essentially a reboot of an entirely forgotten shitty superhero from an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon. The guys at Cartoon Network reused some of the animations from the original in this new show, adding some new voice lines and interviews, repurposing the old forgotten superhero into a narcissistic late-night talk show host. The show was weird, the show was low budget, and surprisingly enough to the people at home, the show was good. Space Ghost Coast to Coast served as a proof of concept for pushing the non-conventional and appealing to more mature audiences, and after this, things only went up from there. Cartoon Network was pushing out classics left and right. Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, The Powerpuff Girls, Ed, Edd and Eddy, Courage the Cowardly Dog. They couldn't be stopped. But there was something missing. Mike Lazo, co-creator of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, had great success within the company, helping to create another program block, Toonami, an action-oriented afternoon cartoon block. But Lazo yearned for those Space Ghost days. In the late 90s, Lazo would work with the production company William Street, previously known as Ghost Planet, to create 4 new shows: The Brack Show, C-Lab 2021, Harvey Birdman Attorney at Law, and Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Shows all in similar style and in some cases direct offshoots of Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Lazo strongly felt that the network was missing out on targeting a larger demographic of teenagers and young adults watching the channel, and in many ways, these shows were made for this audience. With competition from other networks, as well as an underutilized late-night programming block up for grabs, Lazo was pushing hard for a new late-night adults-only programming block, being a big fan of the name Cartoon Network After Dark. There, however, was apprehension within the company over worries regarding possible alienation of their audience of primarily, children. Despite this, after a bit of brainstorming on the name, development of their initial lineup of shows, and most importantly, approval of president of Cartoon Network Betty Cohen, the new block was called
Adult Swim. All kids out of the pool.
Since I'm guessing many of you recognize this name and were at the very least interested enough on the topic to click on this video, you know that Adult Swim would go on to be a giant success. Adult Swim wasn't like much else that was out there on television at the time. Its original programming was weird, unpredictable, and its animations were experimental, crude, and in some cases, absurdly off-putting. You've likely heard many people describe Adult Swim as an experience, and that's because it kind of was. The bumpers were odd, unique, and in some cases just outright terrifying. They prided themselves on testing new styles of animation and experimenting with the unthinkable, and people loved it. The nighttime television block on a cartoon channel originally meant for children would go on to bleed itself through not just American culture, but early internet culture as a whole. The animations, style of humor, and overall mood of the two subcultures had a symbiotic relationship, benefiting and feeding off of each other. From a mainstream perspective, I can't say exactly how animations from Adult Swim really changed the landscape or style of something like a Disney, Pixar, or like a DreamWorks, but in the underground culture of the internet, sites like Newgrounds and early YouTube animations ooze with the same energy that Adult Swim offered. I think this definitely has to do with them both working with a low budget, and it's because of this, Adult Swim is all about giving any creator a chance to do something unique and even risky. Xavier, a Renegade Angel, is one of the most weird and terrifying fever dream abominations of a show I have ever seen, and at the time, there was nothing like that. Before we had Jimmy Neutron Happy Family Hour, we had some, whatever the hell this was. Adult Swim gave creators a chance to do this, and in some cases, they even gave creators a second chance. Although I can't deny that Adult Swim didn't initially popularize the adult animated comedy, hell, we had The Simpsons before Cartoon Network was the only thing, but Adult Swim's ability to bring back now classics that were initially canceled, like Futurama or Family Guy, helped to cement the genre as a part of mainstream culture. These adult animated sitcoms weren't the only thing that Adult Swim was able to bring over to the channel and popularize. Although considered somewhat separate creations of Mike Lazo, Toonami and Adult Swim in the eyes of the public were fairly interlinked. Toonami originally launched as an animated action block with shows like Johnny Quest and Thundercats, eventually morphed into showing something not nearly as popular at the time: anime. Because of Toonami's frequently close viewing time to Adult Swim, in the eyes of many, Toonami became part of Adult Swim in a way. And that's because not long after the launch of Adult Swim, they started airing anime as well. Now, before this, anime was known by some over in the West, and there had been a few successful animations from Japan that were able to become popular, with Ghost in the Shell and Akira being some prime examples. However, Adult Swim and Toonami were responsible for bringing Western audiences a generation of classics, and in many ways were crucial in making anime as popular as it is today. Shows like Cowboy Bebop, Fullmetal Alchemist, Trigun, Yu Yu Hakusho, Samurai Champloo, Death Note, classics that were all brought over from Japan thanks to Adult Swim and Toonami were able to grow their own cult followings outside of their original intended audience, creating a new demand for more. Anime like these previously mentioned not only had fairly different animation styles as compared to American cartoons, but the tone and style of these shows were entirely different as well. Some of these animes were serious, disturbing, and in some cases, straight up like depressing, dude. And for a lot of the audiences over here in the land of the yeehaw, animation was for kids, but all of this on Adult Swim, this didn't feel like this was for kids. Adult Swim was pivotal in reshaping the view of animation in the eyes of Western audiences because of this. What was well known before as a genre that was pretty much always focused on entertaining children had morphed into something new, a medium for storytelling. Whether these stories were batshit insane or maybe a bit of something more grounded, Adult Swim was a place for these shows to flourish. Although I don't think Adult Swim is entirely responsible for any and every decision that went into animation after its conception, I think it has undoubtedly made an impact on how the industry developed. And I mean, I'm focusing on animation mainly in this video, but Adult Swim was pivotal in launching certain music careers, popularizing certain comedy formats, and further establishing household names. I mean, looking at music alone, there's MF Doom, Danger Mouse, Nujabes, Tyler the Creator, Flying Lotus, Madlib, J Dilla, Run the Jewels, iconic names in hip-hop. I don't think Adult Swim's impact can really be understated, and as someone who's a huge fan of animation in any and all forms, well, almost any, I'm just happy I got to experience this channel in its prime, and I'm happy that so many other people enjoyed it as well. Thank you all for watching this video. I've been wanting to do something on Adult Swim for, well, forever. I love it, and I'm hoping that maybe I'll make something in the future. Maybe make another video on it, something like that. We'll see. Special thanks to this month's patrons: Mads, Dave the Unknown, Jimmy Chocolate Cream Boy Genius Kipjack, Griff, Einhar Anderson, Turmeric, and Maddie Grady. You are all stupidly appreciated, and I can't say thank you enough for supporting my content. And that even goes to you, fellow audience member. Seriously, you guys mean the world. And I guess I'll see you all in the next video. But until then, take care.